Hey, everybody, we are here with another episode of the Wisconsin Investor Podcast, and I'm super excited for today. We've got a very unique guest today, I would say, at least unique background, different from anybody we've interviewed so far. So I'm super excited. And I'll introduce him in a second. Before I do that, I just want to do a little commercial for Wisconsin Discount Properties, who sponsors the show. And I like to feature a deal of the week that maybe you're on our list, maybe you're not, but just to share a little bit about maybe something you missed out on, and maybe it'll motivate you to get in the game if you're not currently. So the deal I'm going to talk about today was a property we had out maybe a month or two ago in Oshkosh. It's a mobile home, so not the sexiest of properties out there, but this one, somebody was be all into it for about $75,000. It's on a little, I think about a half acre of land. We're expecting rent to be around $1,200 a month. After doing some calculations the other day, I actually ended up buying this one because nobody wanted it. So I said, sure, I'll scoop it up. Estimating the cash flow about $650 a month. That doesn't count maintenance and CapEx and some of those other things. So call it net $300 after we factor all that stuff in. But a nice little one. Throw it in the portfolio. We're burning this thing, so we paid cash. We're going to fix it up a little bit, do some things, and then refinance out of it. Have an infinite return on our cash, and let that thing spit off $300 a month. So we're excited about that. If you're looking for deals like that, or maybe mobile homes aren't your thing, hop on our buyers list. We have deals every Monday. Hit your inbox at 6 a.m. Central Time, and offers are due Thursday at 1 o'clock. Go to WisconsinDiscountProperties.com, put your info in, and start getting deals sent to you daily. All right, let's get into the episode. I am super excited. I have Mark Pomeranke. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you said it right. Good
Perfect.
job, Corey.
Mark joining us from Arizona today. How's the weather down there today, brother?
Well, it's better than Wisconsin. I think today we're going to be in the 70s today, so it's going to be
Oh,
fine.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
by the time this airs, hopefully we'll be getting close to that. So
exactly.
excited for that. Well, Mark, I got a chance to meet you at the REI Success meeting in Green Bay. And just from having a little bit of conversation with you, I said, dude, I got to have this guy on. You're a faith-based guy like myself, which I appreciate. So I know you come from a great place where your heart is when you're doing business and what you're doing, which is important. I think whether you're faith-based or not, I think integrity is a huge thing in this industry and giving everybody a good name. But also your background was really interesting. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your background in real estate and how you got started and what you got started into?
Sure. As Corey said, it's certainly a different topic than you've had before. But I actually started a hotel chain, a local Wisconsin-based chain, Cobblestone Hotels. I was a co-founder of that brand. Sold my share in 2017.
Awesome.
But our first property was actually in Clintonville, Wisconsin.
Really?
Yep, and we opened in January of '08 was our
Okay.
first property. So we came up with the idea in '07. Everything was exciting, and the money was easy at the time, and then the financial crisis hit. But
Yeah.
we basically grew it. When I sold, we had about 83 properties, I believe.
Wow.
And I mean, now they have like 150, 160, something like that. So
Oh
it's
my
really
goodness.
growing. But we started out, my business partner and myself, we actually came up with the idea on an 8-hour car drive. And we're like, nobody is hitting small little towns developing new properties. You have the
Yeah.
little mom and pop properties, but nothing,
Yeah.
nothing like a major brand.
Right.
So came back to the office, kind of ran some numbers, tried to figure out, gee, could we make something make sense? I first came up with 20 room properties. Well, at 20,
Okay.
it didn't make any sense.
Okay.
But once I got to like 30 rooms or so, it started to make some sense when I made it kind of a public-private partnership with Tax Increment Financing and
Okay.
a variety of local incentives with the communities. Needless to say, we basically started in Clintonville, and from there it just kind of zoomed all over the all over the country. We got phone calls from everywhere, and we
Wow.
we we were building 10 to 15 properties a year.
Wow.
So it's kind of interesting. We became, I believe we were the second largest hotel builder in the country for many years.
Wow.
And not knowing a thing about construction when I started, I didn't know the difference between soffit and fascia. I've had
I
the
still
pleasure
don't.
to, exactly. Me neither, but I know how to pass the test. So
Or get somebody
uh,
who knows, right? Yeah.
that
Delegate it.
that's
Yeah.
absolutely. We certainly were blessed with, just a phenomenal group of subs, as well as staff and things like that. Just,
Awesome.
very blessed.
That's
That's all I
awesome.
can say.
There's
But
so many ways. Like I already know this one's probably going to go a little longer because I have so many things I want to ask you about. I want to go back to the financial crisis though, because I still hear this. I've been in real estate since 2016. And back then everybody was doom and gloom, right? They wanted to be the next person to predict the next crash, right? That's what I kept hearing over and over and over again. Well, you went through a crash and you were building a business, a startup from ground up. Like what were the challenges then? And like, how did you guys get through it to continue to grow with this new business model?
Well, I tell you, we looked at each other, my business partner and me, and said, I think we're done. We're finished. And we're like, then I'm like, oh, we're not done. So we kept at it, and quite frankly, it in some cases it was a blessing, because we were able to recruit just the most phenomenal talent because they didn't have any other work, and
Okay.
we basically, the key is finding a need and finding a want. And well, the bottom line is all these little small towns all over the country have a need for some lodging. It's just that nobody, projects were too small. The big players didn't want to play there. And
Yeah.
so, so we were kind of, in a way, recession proof, because there is so many of these little markets.
Sure.
When times are good, people don't want to travel and go to those markets, but when they're hungry, they'll go anywhere. And
Yeah.
so we were able to take, basically grow through that adversity. But I'll tell you how we actually started, or I mean, I should say, we first, it was going to be my business partner, Brian, and myself. We were just going to own all the properties. We were going to basically go into town. We're going to get the TIF district or TIF financing, some financial incentive, and then basically use the local bank there and do the deal and own them 50-50.
Okay.
Well, that worked until we got to Bloomfield, Iowa. We were on property number 6.
Okay.
And in Bloomfield, Iowa is the Davis County Bank, which is now is the Success Bank.
Okay.
We were on the way there. We just received $420,000 of upfront TIF financing.
Nice.
And we were there to sign our construction and loan. I was on the way there. I was probably about an hour out, and I get a call from the banker, and he's like, "Mark, I got some bad news." I said, "What's the problem?" He's like, "Well, we're a small bank, as you know, but we just got 2 car dealerships back, and we can't do any more commercial loans.
Oh,
We're toast." And we're like, "Great." He goes, "But we really want to, have a property in our town."
Yeah.
And so we put our thinking caps on and said, "Well, how can we accomplish this?" So we kind of worked it backwards and tried to figure out, well, what amount of money would the bank be able to lend on, and just worked it backwards. And Darren was the banker's name, and Darren got on the phone. He's like, "You know what? I'm going to start calling all my people that are, kind of the heavy hitters in the county, in the small town there."
Okay.
And he just started calling and seeing if people would contribute. So we kind of put an investment group together.
Okay.
I mean, he was calling the Amish, he was calling everybody. It was amazing.
Wow.
And we literally, that was the platform that really catapulted our success throughout the country.
That's amazing.
We basically, from there, we put together a little private partnership. So every property that we developed was a different ownership group, a different bank. So I literally had relationships with 60, 70, 80 banks in my time there. And it just literally took off all over the country at that point.
Wow.
At the time, as if you recall, the ag markets and the energy markets were fairly strong. Well, so we went to North Dakota, and we did deals all throughout North Dakota, for both in the ag areas as well as the oil areas.
Okay.
But again, down to Texas, we were all over the country. We actually, our farthest west was Idaho, farthest south was Texas, farthest north was North Dakota, and farthest east was Pennsylvania. So any of those states in between there, we were doing deals.
Wow.
And today they're still doing deals there.
That's amazing.
But yeah, it was interesting what can be accomplished. And I really have to give a lot of the credit, well, obviously, to my Lord and Savior. I mean, all of it's a blessing, but the community banks. I mean, they really, that is what I would say really helped our growth. It's
That's
because
awesome.
they weren't the big Wells Fargo's of the world. They don't care, and
Oh,
they weren't doing it. But the local community banks, they care, and what I recommend people get relationship with your local community bank.
100%. Yeah,
It's
that's is I teach. I have a course on the birth strategy,
mhm,
and I have a whole section in there just about building relationships with community banks because it's so important. And I didn't realize it's down in where you are in Phoenix area. Right now, currently, there's not a lot of community banks down there.
no,
It's very much it's very difficult to find. You have to use a lot of private lenders in that neck of the woods.
right.
So it's very, we're very blessed here in Wisconsin that we have a very strong community bank culture
Hmm.
and environment for people who are looking to invest, whether that's in hotels, development, um, community projects. Like they take a lot of pride in helping develop the communities and infusing the capital that's needed to do some of those things. So I love that that's how you
Absolutely.
guys went and that was your strategy to do that.
Yep.
Another thing I heard there, Mark, too, is a lot of times we get hit with adversity, right? Like it's like, oh man, you guys could have just been like, well, bank's not going to do that one in Iowa. I guess we'll just fold up shop. Great run we had. Let's just get these six and we'll stop there, right? But instead,
Right.
you guys said, huh, maybe we got to think of a different way to do this. And you just creatively problem solved and bam, it was the
Yeah.
magic sauce. You needed that bank to deny you guys, right? Like to create this whole model, which is
Right.
fascinating. So the two things there, what could be viewed from the outside as, oh man, that's a terrible time to start in the hotel business, which is what I thought. I'm like, wow, you guys started in '08. That's a terrible time. Actually, it was a blessing for you. And then the
Hmm.
same thing with this bank because of '08 and what was happening. Another one that would have been for a lot of people would have stopped them in their tracks or had them fold shop. You guys took that adversity and just got creative of how to still make something work. It wasn't a
Yeah.
question of if
Absolutely.
it's going to work, is how do we make it work?
Yep.
That's outstanding. I love it. Well, I've got a million different things, different ways to go. I want to go into TIFs. Okay.
Sure.
If we can go into TIFs for a minute, I think for a lot of people out there who are newer to real estate, and even for me, I've been in this 6 years, I still have not done a development deal. I
Okay.
would love to do a development deal just because it
Well, let's do one
sounds,
together.
there we go.
Yeah.
It sounds
Yeah.
exciting and it
Yeah.
sounds like fun. And I know TIF, I've been in now and around enough of these that I understand what TIF is. Can you explain to people what is TIF? How do you go about getting it? What do you look for if you're looking to do a development project? Like talk a little bit about that.
Certainly. Well, TIF it's basically a tax increment finance district, or it's a TID, the tax increment district, or whatever. Uh, every state's a little bit different. It's TIF is in 40, I believe, 48 states.
Okay.
Now in Arizona, they don't allow TIFs. That's
Oh,
one state, so I've never done one here because they don't have it.
okay.
But at Wisconsin, I mean, throughout the Midwest, they're in most states, and that's
Okay.
how things get done.
Okay.
And basically, how it works is they set up a district, and they freeze the tax that is currently being produced in that area,
Okay.
and anything that the growth of the tax. So if you create new structures or things like that, then you can basically utilize that increment in revenue. So let's say a whole area created $100,000 in property tax,
Okay.
but after you put in new buildings, it's 200,000.
Okay.
Well, the 100,000 difference between the 100 to 200 can be utilized as financial incentives,
Okay.
basically.
Okay.
And the nice thing about it is, there's two ways you can do TIFs. One is a pay go TIF, it's called, where basically they don't give you the money up front. But what they do is they give you all that increment back every year as you pay your property tax. So
Okay. Okay.
it's a little, I guess, cities say it's less risk to them because if they, I guess they don't have to pay or whatever, they don't have any obligations out there.
Sure.
The other way is where the city will go and say, well, gee, we're going to have, this extra 100 grand coming in for the next forever. um,
Yeah.
they can go use their muni bonds or financing sources, which they're able to get money a lot cheaper than a private developer can.
Yeah.
And basically take the revenue from that to pay off the bonds as you pay the taxes.
Okay.
The nice thing about the taxes is, as you know, taxes are in first position on top of financing. So they're before a bank loan. If you don't
Mhm.
pay the bank, the taxes are still going to be on there. And if the bank foreclosed on you, they have to pay that property tax
For
back.
sure.
So it's kind of a risk free deal for the city.
Okay.
it gets a lot of debate, or a lot of, what do you call it, heated conversation over, well, gee, you're giving these developers all this money. Well, yes and no. It's
Yeah.
how things are created.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, that's literally how we started our company. The little backstory here is, I was working as a hotel manager for many years, and I'm like, I really want to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And I had I'd saved a little bit of money, not a lot, but then I also had built up about 2 years, I think about 70 grand of credit cards.
Mm.
And I said, you know what? I'm not working for a paycheck. I am going to go make this happen. I was literally down to my last $23 of available credit on my credit card before we hit our first deal.
No
And
way.
so the whole company, I mean, which I've created, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of stuff, started with my business partner had a HELOC of
Okay.
40. I think the land we bought in Clintonville. Now, again, I may be off by a few numbers here,
Sure.
but in Clintonville, we bought our first site just under $47,000, and that's what we used his money for
Okay.
2 weeks. 2 weeks is what we used his money for before we got the money from the city to pay him back. That's literally
Wow.
what started the whole company.
That is
And
so cool.
it's
I
just,
love
well,
that.
again, all glory to God. I mean, there's no way that we could pull this off
Absolutely.
without his blessing. So
That's
it's like,
amazing. So that
yeah,
first Clintonville deal, let's break this down for a second.
sure.
So you have 47,000. So you already had the wheels in motion, I imagine. How long was the process that you guys had to go through to get the TIF money and like start this whole thing and go through that before you had that injection of capital there to pay back that HELOC?
It took about, let's see here. We came up with the idea, if I remember right, in January of '07 or February '07. I think that was
Okay.
when our trip. Um, we went and met with the city. Interesting story with the city. I actually, the first city I was actually Brillion, Wisconsin. We
Oh,
met with
okay.
Brillion.
Yeah.
When I came back to the office, like the next day, we called Brillion up and met with the mayor and the city manager, and explained what we were going to do. And at the time, I know they had been searching for a 60, 70 room property,
Okay.
and it's just like, not Brilliant's not big enough to support that.
Sure.
But if they could get it, good for them.
Yep.
So we explained it to them. They just seemed like, oh, I think we're going to hold out until we get one of those properties. And I kind of was saying, well, between me and you, it's they're going to be holding out for a while.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but no problem. The next day, I called Lisa, the city manager up at Clintonville. I went up to meet her, and and kind of explained to Lisa what our intentions were. And it's so funny. She gets up, she goes and closes her door to the meeting room. She says, "Okay, this stays in this room, because if the mayor finds out that we had hotel developers in my office and you don't build a hotel in Clintonville, it's going to break his heart." That's been his whole.
Oh, so you hit the
it,
jackpot there.
it was like literally it was kind of a joke. It's like that was the thing. um,
Wow.
so basically, we had such support. It was the most amazing time, and shout out to Lisa. She was awesome,
That's
going
amazing.
helping get through the process with the council and everything. We actually met with the council. We got, if I remember right, back then, I think it was like $240,000 of upfront, and I think we got $100,000 like a revolving loan fund type of thing.
Okay.
Um, and they approved it. They gave us a standing ovation. It was the most amazing thing. We walked out of that room. I looked at my business partner Brian. I said, "Did you see what just happened there? We just went. They gave us our down payment, and we got a standing ovation." I said, I love rural America. I love small town America."
They're giving you 300 and some grand and they're
Yeah.
clapping for you as you walk out the
Yes.
door. That's
You're right.
incredible. Oh,
And they
I
were
love
just
that.
so full of joy, and just
Yeah,
like blessed that we would come and do something in their community.
that's
and
awesome.
and it's just endless stories like this throughout the country.
Yeah.
I mean, I've
Now,
got
I grew up in Pulaski. Is there one in
okay,
Pulaski?
yeah, there is
I
one in
thought
Pulaski.
so. And I
Yeah.
think I know some people that invested in that one. So
Yeah, I
that's
think
awesome.
Al Moran was Al was one of the leaders in that deal. He
Okay.
owned a gas station, convenience store there, and some other
Sure.
stuff around there.
Okay. Very
But
cool.
yeah,
Very cool. So,
so
so the financing piece of this, then, so you get this, let's call it 300,000. You got some of it revolving, some of it
mhm,
cash up front. So then does the bank count that towards down payment?
yes, they do.
Really?
Yep, they do. Yeah, actually, and it was funny is because in Clintonville, The project at the time, I think the total was 1.6 million,
Okay.
was the build
Okay.
and stuff like that. So, they contributed, 300 and some thousand. So, but we originally got approved by, it was a Dairyman's Bank, if I remember right, back in Clinton, which they're not there anymore. It's changed hands a few times
Sure.
now. I think it's actually Bank First or something like that. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it was a great bank. They allowed it was back in the easy times. That was the good news right before the financial crisis
Yeah.
there.
They're handing
But
money out like candy at a parade.
absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, because basically once we developed it, we got an appraisal. It was appraised, I don't know, over $2 million, and
Wow.
so they actually they said, well, we'll do this deal. We'll get you an SBA loan. We'll do you the TIF, whatever, and we'll make it happen. And honestly, at the end, we didn't even do the SBA loan on that property because they're like, well, the appraisal came good enough. We can do conventional, even though
Wow.
I had nothing. I mean, literally no
So
money.
you
So.
guys had no money into this deal.
Mm-mm.
And so they gave you, so 1.6 was going to be the cost, right? I'm doing
Yeah.
the math
Hmm.
here.
Yeah.
20% of that is about 3.2, right?
320. Yeah.
Three or
Right.
three, 320, 320. So you
Yeah.
had
Hmm.
enough of that. That was all TIF money. So
Correct. Yep.
oh my God. So you guys are burying hotels.
We were burying hotels, brand new build hotels, and we were adding value.
Wow.
Is what we
That's
were doing.
incredible, man. Is that
Yeah.
now I know you're out of you've sold out and all that stuff, but I imagine you're probably still keep up with the hotel industry if I had to guess a little bit.
Absolutely.
Is that still a viable option for somebody out there? Or is that ship kind of sailed now?
Well, it depends. The key is to having the municipality really want your property
Okay.
project. That's the thing. They
Okay.
they have some, what do you call it? Some flexibility if it's something that really is on their list.
Okay.
And and a hotel provides a lot of economic impact for a community.
Okay.
I mean, back in the day when I first started, every guest that you had stay in your town, instead of going down the road and staying at a different community, you generate about $160 a night in revenue between the hotel stay, them going out to eat at their local restaurant, buying a T-shirt, buying some
Yeah.
gas, whatever. There was an economic impact that was quite
Sure.
substantial.
Yeah.
And the reality is we weren't a strain on like the school systems or anything like that because we didn't, it wasn't like we were adding housing and that had to or whatever, so
Yeah.
it wasn't
Yeah.
this. So the services, even though the tax, they weren't going to be recognizing that tax increase for many years. It was,
Whenever they
I guess,
did, though, it's kind of like gravy on top for them. There's not an
correct.
additional
Yeah.
whole lot of servicing they have to do. So that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense. Yeah, and that makes me wonder. I wonder why so many municipalities are so anti Airbnb. I get it from like your housing perspective thing, but it seems like with that
Hmm.
economic impact, plus they're getting hotel tax in a lot of these towns now too,
True.
based off
Yeah.
of those stays. You would think they'd be more receptive to that, but
There's a
I
lot
see.
of lobbyists in the hotel industry probably
Yeah,
going after them.
yeah. Well, I've been to some of these town board meetings, and the
Yeah.
arguments against it are just, you get a couple of loud people, and they just, if the Airbnb owners don't show up, nobody else is there to hear them. So what are these planning commissions going to do? They're going to cave
Right.
to the thing. So, wow. Okay, so that helps me completely understand the tax initiative. So, somebody out there, let's say they wanted to do a single family development, or maybe they wanted to do multifamily development, or they want to do, a strip mall or something like that. You
Mhm.
mentioned having the town really want that project. How does somebody go about finding that information? Like Clintonville, how did you know to go to Clintonville? Like, what was your research on that, or how did you figure that out?
It was interesting. So when I came up with the idea, I'm like, I'm going to hit towns that are have some population to them. They have a good industrial base or good room demand generators, but they're not big enough where they're going to get a big hotel.
Okay.
So that was kind of my market study. That's how I looked at towns
Okay.
originally, and obviously cobblestone is now built in the big cities and things like that.
Sure.
But when we started, that's what we were. We were rural America, small town. And actually, if you remember, and I don't know, do you remember like the Elko stores, Elko Duckwall? Like
So,
they were kind of like the Palmyra, that type
okay.
of thing.
Okay.
We really followed them. I looked at
Mm,
uh their what they basically look to figure out what location to put stores. It is
yeah.
usually county seats, and it usually was with a trade area less than 16,000 people,
Really?
because at 16,000 Walmart came in is what it was. So
Okay.
they kind of filled that niche, and we kind of were the same thing.
Really? That's
Yeah,
awesome. Very
Yeah.
cool.
So I mean, our typical competition was ma and pa, little up, 10, 20 room little
Little
drive up
motel.
type of motel thing.
Yeah.
That's literally in most of the towns. That's what these um, properties were.
Wow.
So
Okay.
so we filled
Very
a niche. I mean, we basically when we came up with this idea, we went to all the big hotel brands,
okay.
and they're like, no, we're not interested. We don't
Okay.
want a 30 room property or 40 room property. We want 70, 80 rooms,
Sure.
that type of thing.
Scale. Yeah.
They scale it. So
Yeah.
what we basically did is we took all the good elements from all the big brands and put it in a small box. That's what we did.
Nice.
And
Very cool.
so and so we ended up eventually franchising, and so we became vertically integrated because I'm like, well, how do I make a living? Why I do the build my brand?
Right.
I need to make a living. Well,
Sure.
construction. So that's what we did. We became the GCs and the developers of them. So
Okay.
that gave our today money.
Okay.
So as we could build, the long term brand as well as ownership all over the country.
Awesome. That is so cool.
So
There's a lot we could go into there as well with franchising and all that stuff too. Talk about the I want to go back to that. I'm still curious on somebody out there, like, because we've had some land that we've put out to the buyers list, right? We think it's a great
mhm.
development opportunity just from what we can see, but we're learning there's a lot more that goes into, getting things approved and just the processes and wetlands and all that kind of stuff. So like, where does somebody start? They got a friend or family member who's got, 30, 40 acres they want to sell in a little rural America town. How do they go about figuring out, like, what does this town want? Or do they just call, is it as simple as just call the city? Is there
Yeah,
a plan thing
yeah.
online somewhere?
Actually, the best thing is to contact like the city manager and the economic development person. Either they have one in the city or in the county or that
Okay.
type of thing.
Okay.
Kind of gives you an idea of what they're looking for. A
Okay.
lot of times they'll do a market study. The city will, like, for housing study and what their future, like a future plan of how the city's going to look or something
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
And I believe I may be right, I may be wrong on this one, but
Okay.
I think the cities have to like create their master plan every so many years of what the
Yeah.
land use is and all that stuff.
Yep.
So it's getting in line with there. And here's another little tidbit that I found
Yeah.
over the communities I've dealt with. In many cases, locals have a hard time doing it
Okay.
because there's a lot of politics and a lot of like what should I say, just a different mindset of people where they're like, well, we don't want Johnny to get that incentive to do this because I didn't like Johnny. John was mean at me in high school or whatever
Right.
like that,
Right.
or I dated his wife or whatever. There's things like that
Yeah.
where I
Yeah.
could come in from the outside, negotiate the deal, and Johnny may come in and be an investor with me. It was like
Yeah.
it was the craziest thing.
Oh, I bet
It,
that makes a lot of sense. I grew up in Pulaski, 3,000
sure.
people. I get it. There's a lot of small town politics and everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everybody's dirty laundry from 30, 40 years ago. So
Yep.
I get that. Well, that helps a lot, Mark, because I think that's one thing we've struggled with is just understanding what does the town want. Now, is the TIF part of that? Like, if you call them up, they'll say, yeah, we have TIF money for XYZ. Or how does that, is that something they then go apply to get TIF money from somewhere? How does the
Yes
city
and
go about
no.
that? Okay. Okay.
Some districts are already established,
Okay.
so you can kind of like join in there. Otherwise, if they have capacity, they may be able to create a new district.
Okay.
Now there is a limitation, and again, my mind's not with it anymore. But
Sure.
there's a
Yeah.
certain amount of tax base that you can have in a TIF district. I mean, you
Okay.
can't put the whole city in a TIF district because they obviously need to operate the city.
For sure.
So,
Okay.
but
And
state
then
law and things like that. So
okay. And then they'll designate, hey, we want to see XYZ type of development
yeah,
here. So we're gonna hold out our TIF money until we get, like, Brilliant's case, there's 60 or
right.
70 unit hotel
hmm
or whatever the case is. Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
just so you know, Brilliant was property number three.
Was that really?
So
You ended up getting
yeah,
one there? Oh, that's awesome.
they literally after they saw us, they came back to us and we built
That
there
that's
there.
hilarious. Oh, I
Yeah,
love it, Mark.
they're
That's
great people over there. They were awesome to deal with. But again, they in their eye they thought of a water park they were going to have and all this other stuff, and we're like, it doesn't make sense.
I
So
like the vision. I like their vision, though. I mean, great
right,
visionaries there. Brilliant. It sounds like they got some
yeah,
big aspirations. So that's
yeah.
great.
They're progressive. Brilliant's a great town. I mean, there's more. If I recall, I think there's more jobs in that town than there is people. Just with like
Really,
errands and all
Aaron's,
these other,
yeah,
yeah, all the different industries that are in
that's
there.
great. That's great.
So
Yeah, that's a great. We've wholesaled a few deals there, and in fact, this week, whoever's on our buyers list won't get this until several weeks later. But we
yeah,
have a really nice big house in Brilliant that is out to the list, and I'm always a big fan. I'm like, our properties, whoever ends up buying them from us ends up doing
hmm
really well there. They sell really quick if you're flipping because people need housing there to work at errands and all these other places. And it's a good location between Appleton and Green Bay. You're
yeah,
kind of centrally located a little bit there. So um,
absolutely,
let's talk about banks. So you've dealt with 60 to 70 community banks.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
What are some of the things? So somebody out here right now, they're listening to this. They maybe have done a few deals. Maybe they've never used a community bank before. What are the things that somebody should do to set themselves up for success working with community banks? And what are some things they should be looking for out of their bank?
Well, I guess first of all, um, I actually go and I research the banks before I go to the town to
Okay.
get an idea if they actually have the capacity to do the project.
Okay.
And how you can do that is a real quick rule of thumb on it. They can basically usually lend about 10 to 15% of their equity is
Okay.
what they can do.
Okay.
So if you look in the banks, say it's a $200 million bank of deposits and they have $30 million in equity, their lending limit is probably about 3 million bucks
Okay.
is what they are. And again, I may be off a little bit, but it's a general rule. You don't want to go to a bank where if you're trying to get a $3 million loan and their deposits are 80 million and their capital is 6 million, they're not going to be able to do that because
Okay.
they're
And that
going to
was
be able to.
about 10 to 15%, you said, of their equity?
Yeah,
Okay.
yep,
Okay.
roughly is what they
And just for the
look at.
audience so they understand the legal lending limit, can you talk a little bit about what that means just for in third grade crayon for everybody?
Sure. Their legal lending limit is the maximum amount they can have to one borrower.
Okay.
So it can be, one big project, or it could be, 20 different homes or whatever. There's a certain level where the bank's like, you have too much money with one borrower is
Yep.
how it
And
works,
they
and
can
then
participate with other banks if you go
they
over
can.
that, right? So they can kind of like, I don't know
Yep.
how that works, right? But they can join up and kind of pass that
Yep.
over to somebody else. And I don't know how they work it, but
Yeah,
something
it's
like
just kind of like a fractional, like we do in private lending, but we put a few people together, and
sure.
you own
Okay.
25% of that loan or whatever, that type of
Got it.
thing. They
Got it.
do it on the bank side, but with the FDIC and the whole regulations, I mean that's the only way a small bank uh, does loans.
Okay.
Now there's another way a small bank can do loans, and that's if you get an SBA loan or if you get a USDA loan, which
Okay.
USDA is another popular option, especially in the smaller markets.
Okay.
Usually, if you have a town of less than, well, ideally less than 25,000 people, USDA is usually an option.
Oh.
Sometimes they'll go up to 50,000.
Oh
And
wow.
I really like it's a longer process, but it's a good program to get things
Okay.
done.
Well, that's
So
90% of Wisconsin right there. Less than
exactly, yeah,
50,000.
yeah, absolutely. You're not going to do it in Appleton or in Green Bay or in,
Sure.
in the town, but again,
Yeah.
in small towns of less than 25,000,
Sure.
it's potentially an option to do a USDA, and especially for hotels because they have the business and industry portion of the USDA.
Mm,
That's
okay.
what it is, and tourism is one of the industries
Okay. And what's the
that they
benefit of
that
the
they.
USDA loan for a borrower?
It's to be able to go to a bank that's a small bank and actually be able to do the loan, because all they have to do is is like a USDA up to $5 million. They guarantee the bank that they'll cover 80% of the loss if there's
Oh,
loss on it. So the bank only needs to actually, when they're doing a $5 million loan that's backed by USDA, it's really they're only doing $1 million loan. So
wow.
it opens up so many more banks
The
to be able to
risk
do
is
your
so
deal.
much less.
Correct. Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. Because
Otherwise,
they,
it's the opposite. Otherwise, they're normally up to 80%. They're covering
yeah,
80%, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yep,
Wow.
yeah. So it's a great deal for a small bank to be able to kind of play with the bigger boys.
Yeah.
Is what
Okay.
it is. So,
Okay. Very
well, I
cool.
know on the residential side, do you have people use the USDA for their 100% loan for buying a home?
We don't deal a lot with retail buyers. We work with a lot of agents though that probably do, but we deal
Yeah,
more so with investors who are going to end up flipping it or
Yeah.
whatever the case is. So that we have bought a couple. We had a multifamily property that we wholesaled to somebody else, and the process was over 2 years to get it
Yeah.
through the USDA's red tape. So I'm a little leery about USDA for that reason. There was a lot of
Yeah.
these, you might get the better financing with some of these, but they sink your teeth in with some other stuff as far as trying to offload this thing. He had to get these the owner had to get vouchers from the tenants and had to go through this whole make sure he didn't discriminate. And there was just all this red tape that had to go
Mm-hmm.
on in order to act for him to be able to sell his own property, which was
Right.
he couldn't even just pay him off. I mean, I think the loan on it from USDA was only down. It was down to like $7,000 or something so
Oh,
small.
gee.
And he could have easily just stroked a check and said, "I'll pay you off." But in
Mm-hmm.
order to get a payoff, he had to go through this whole process, and it literally took us 2 years for him to finally be able to sell his 8 unit property. So
Mm-hmm.
it was. I learned quite a few things about USDA at that point, as far as on the backside of it. So
Right.
I'm not as familiar with on the front end as far as borrowing from them, but I
Yeah.
probably would tend to try to find other options for that reason if there's a lot of red tape on
Yes.
the back end. But
Mm-hmm.
I can see what you're saying, where if you're in development and your plans are just to develop this thing and continue to keep it for the foreseeable future,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great option to open you up to a lot of other lenders if you're running into some brick walls. So is that kind of similar with SBA then? Is that what they typically do as well? Is it? Oh,
Yeah, SBA, there's really two different ways that they have the 7A program, which is basically a direct loan. So you can go
okay.
to, any practically any bank, and they can do the loan and USDA back or SBA backs it,
Okay.
and they'll back what is up to 90% on some of those
Oh,
loans.
wow.
So it's a good deal. Then there's another thing where you use the CDCs, the community development corporations, like
Okay.
WBD is a big one in
Okay.
Wisconsin Business Development,
Okay.
where basically how it works is, let's say you're going to do a project that's, we'll call it $1 million. So $1 million, what you'll do is you'll find a bank that will lend 500,000 in the first mortgage.
Okay.
Then you'll do the SBA 504 portion for the regular, between 300,000 to 400,000 that you can get from them, and then the equity is the difference.
Wow.
Is how it works. So it
Jeez.
it it gives you the ability to have 20-year fixed money on the SBA portion,
Okay.
which is because they basically sell the bonds is what they do,
Okay.
and people buy them and things like
Sure.
that.
Wow. So
But
then are you
so
locked in? Are there some pretty big prepayment penalties if you were to refinance at a certain point and that kind of thing?
yeah, and an SBA, it's a sliding scale.
Okay.
So you have a penalty if you do it. It's basically it goes down by 10% each year.
Okay.
So if your interest, let's say, was 100 grand worth of interest, if you paid them off right away, you're going to pay $100,000 penalty.
Okay.
The next year you're going to pay 90. The next year you're going to pay 80, 70, 60.
Ah,
So after 10 years, there won't be one,
sunsets
but
and
it's
you're good.
the
Okay.
sunsets. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Well, that's
Um,
awesome. I mean, I'm learning so much right now, Mark, because these have always been like dark spots in my brain of like, how do people do these big developments and get this money? And then they're into it with no money. And then you're actually creating money that you didn't
mhm.
have by the equity that you create when you do a new project, if you do it right and you don't
Yeah.
overrun costs and things. So it's a great way. Plus, you get cash flow. There's just so many things. My brain is just going crazy right now. Like so many
Yes.
ideas, right? So many ideas. Going back to, I just want to circle back, and then we'll start to wrap this, Mark. Going back to, we kind of got off on some of these other loan programs, which is great. But what are some of the keys you found to building successful relationship with these local banks? Like, what was your approach to making sure, you know, you were able to get, financing or, keep the relationship with them for the projects?
Again, I go back to the cities, the city managers, the economic development. Basically, when I would come into, or in the mayors and things like that, when I go into a town, they basically, those three people or whatever would invite the local lenders or the local bankers
Huh?
to the meeting. We get them all excited and figure out which one wants to, be the
Play
lead on
ball.
this thing,
Okay.
play ball. And then they direct me through all the people, basically it's depositors or people, their clients, as partners in the deal.
What?
So we really, that's, I literally have in my until I sold, I think I probably have about 800 partners
Oh
that
my
are basically
goodness.
accredited partners throughout the country.
Wow, that's
um
amazing. And what was
yeah.
their I guess, and if you can't talk about this stuff because of confidentiality, please just
Sure.
let me know. But like when you're going out and you had these private folks, right?
Mhm.
What was the allure for them? I mean, was there a certain interest rate you were able to offer? Was it an equity percentage? Like what was the offer to these private folks?
Well, basically, they were equity members, so we didn't offer them anything. They
Okay.
they literally did it because they wanted it for their community. They wanted to, basically, it helps their community when they have family and friends coming to town. They want to have a place to stay,
Sure.
or if they have local businesses or industry, they want to be able to house their visitors that way.
Okay.
And the other thing is just one of those. A lot of my investors were the same people that would give money to like a community center, things like that, where they really they did it for their community, and
Got it.
and they wanted to be able to drive by and tell their friends, yeah, I own 10% of that, or I own whatever, that type of thing.
Got it.
So
Cool.
it's kind of a pride, ego, pride, whatever type
Sure.
of thing, and they're just
Sure.
proud. They just love, they love their community. They think
Yeah.
their community's the best.
Yeah.
When I go into a town, I say, I don't know if this thing's going to work or not, but I'll tell you how I know it's going to work is if we raise enough money here to make it happen, then
Yeah.
it's going to work. And
That's
what we
great.
did do is figured out that our properties perform so much better when we had that local investment group, because
Mhm.
there's so many salespeople out there that say, "Hey, you need to stay at my hotel," whatever. and
That's awesome.
so we position ourselves really well, with each community,
That makes a
and
lot of sense. You got a lot of brand advocates out there constantly, word of
yep,
mouthing you all over the place. That's
absolutely.
amazing. And I'm just thinking about that right now. I live in Door County and I know there's a project up here one of our friends is trying to get done. And she had approached us about investing in it and stuff like that. And it's just for us at the time, it's just probably not a great fit. But that's kind of where I was steering her to. Is like I think you're going to need to target people who are more interested in and really not necessarily the return on capital
Hmm.
or any kind of interest rate percentage, but maybe just a percent ownership of it that want to see this project get developed and want to say that they were a part of it and be able to do it that way, which is I think the approach she's taking, which is going to be super cool if she can get it to go through. But no, that's good. That's awesome, Mark. Well, man, I have so many more things we could probably sit here for hours and hours and hours talking all this stuff. And so I appreciate all of your time, Mark. We always end with a fun question though. Favorite Wisconsin tradition or place to visit?
I actually have two of them.
All right.
Well, the fish fries and the supper clubs.
Oh yeah.
That's what I love about Wisconsin that I miss
Yeah.
out when I'm out here in Arizona. I
Yeah.
split my time between Arizona and Appleton, so it's
So you
back
get
and
your
forth. But
fill when you come into town.
oh yeah, I go to the Beehive off of
Oh,
Highway 76 out in.
yes,
I don't know if you know where that's at down
I
in,
do.
like, okay, I like the Beehive for my fish fry,
Okay.
and I like the Black Otter Supper Club in Hortonville. It's
Oh,
one of
I've
my
heard.
supper
I've
clubs.
never been.
Yeah,
I've never
yeah,
been. I've heard. There you go. Folks
yeah.
listening to this, if you're coming into town for the draft or something, maybe you're not from around here. You got to go check out these two spots Mark's mentioning. And they're probably, if you're flying in Appleton, boom, easy enough. Right. There you
You
go.
bet.
Mark, you going to be coming to the draft?
I am actually going to be in Wisconsin or in Arizona that time.
Oh,
I
okay.
I was just looking at my calendar. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to be there at that, because I have
Okay.
I have all my trips planned out now through May, because I fly back and forth all the time, but those particular days I'm actually in Arizona.
Oh man.
So
Well, we'll miss you. You'll be
I
with us in spirit, Mark.
okay, yeah.
Hey, if somebody wants to pick your brain more about this stuff, or I know you also do some lending too. Maybe before we wrap here, do you want to just talk a little bit about? You don't have to get into specifics, but anything you want to mention
Sure.
about what you're looking for out of a borrower as far as anybody who would need funds?
Yeah, again, it's all relationship. I lend to people I know, that type of thing. So it's not. I don't usually just take random. Yeah, we develop a relationship first. I have to know you, but
Yeah.
then we're pretty flexible depending on what it is. If we're part equity and part debt, or we're all debt, or
Yeah.
if the other thing I like doing is actually like some transactional funding, or if, double closings.
Okay.
Those are nice, and again, in many cases, I'll do 100% of what we need for that,
Yeah.
because it's literally only for the day.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but but other than that, most of my I like to get to know more fix and flippers, or people that are looking for the shorter term money. things
About
like
6 months,
that. So
about a 6 month term is
yeah,
typically what you're looking for maximum.
typically. I mean, obviously we can look at the deal and figure it out, but
Except for
I
my
have
development project I'm bringing in, Mark.
uh,
And
then we're gonna have that's a little longer deal there. We'll have to figure that out. Well, there, Corey. Well, I'll help you out. I'll show you how to go
there we
through
go.
the whole steps. It's like
Awesome, man.
it's
Perfect.
it's fun. It's
Yeah.
just I what I really like to do is that as well as help and try to go through the millions and millions of dollars worth of mistakes that I've made
Yeah.
that you can eliminate.
We'll have you
And
back on for another episode of just how many millions of dollars you've lost over the years of mistakes.
correct
So, like things that you've
mistakes.
done. Yeah, for sure,
Literally,
man.
that's why how I started so many companies is just because of I'm like, well, gee, I started an import company because I lost like a hundred and some $1,000 on an order of granite, and I'm like, well, gee, if I'm going to have the stuff shipped in from China and go through another person and pay them a deposit and they run off with it, why don't I just go to China? And that's how I started an import company.
Wow.
So
I know. There's
it's like,
so much wealth of information from Mark. So, Mark, if somebody wants to get some more info from you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
well, I know, I'm old, but I'm not on social media at this point. Everybody's been trying to tell me to get on social media,
Don't do
but
it. Everybody's getting
I,
off social media, man.
yeah,
I realize
the
it's bad for the brain.
best thing is just to call me actually
Okay.
920-312-4444 again 920-312-4444, or you can just send me an email to markpomeranke@gmail.com. It's MARK and then my last name POMERENKE @gmail.com. And if you want to meet, we can when I'm in Wisconsin, we can sit down and see how I can help you out and things like
Awesome.
that. So, or
Awesome, Mark.
anywhere in the country, actually. So,
Yeah, it
whatever.
sounds like you get
Or,
around.
or if you're in Arizona, again, I spend half the year here
Just
too.
go meet at a
So,
cobblestone somewhere, and then it's a write off, and
right.
everybody's
Well,
happy, right?
yes. Yep.
Awesome, Mark. Well, this is great. And if anybody missed his information, if you have my contact, you can hit me up on I'm on Facebook. I don't go on it very often, but I'm on there. So you can Facebook message me, or you can reach out to us at WisconsinDiscountProperties.com, fill out the contact us and just say, hey, listen to your Mark episode, want to get his contact info. We'll ship that over to you. That being said, if anybody out there is listening to this and you're out of state and you want to invest in Wisconsin, or you're in Wisconsin and you want to start your real estate investing journey, we would love to have that conversation with you. Again, go to the website, WisconsinDiscountProperties.com, put your info in, and myself, Reese, Connor, somebody from our team will reach out to you and try to see if we can help you get started in your journey here in this great state we love, was called Wisconsin. So, Mark, any final words for the audience before we depart here today?
Just don't think small, think big. That's my thing. There's no, if you're going to think, you might as well think big.
I love that.
That's my,
I see
so.
you did that. Went from $23 on your credit card to hotel franchise. So
Yeah, most people start out with a small little fix and flip or something like that. I said, why don't I just build a hotel as my
just go
first
right to
project?
hotels. Well, actually,
Exactly.
before we do wrap, I think this is the best ending we've ever had, Mark, because anybody who's sticking around, I think that's the best advice I could hear is like, sometimes people, they are like, oh, I got to do this little, I hear like, hey, what's your buy box? And like, oh, I want to start at like something around 100,000 or whatever. Just rip the Band-Aid, just get something that's going to make
Yep.
money and go for it. Right.
Right. You have to
Love
do
it,
a lot
man.
less deals.
Yeah, I love it. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome, Mark. Well,
Yep.
thanks again, man, for your time and your expertise. And I would love to have you back on here again in the future. So I know you brought a lot of value today. I know this was a completely different topic, but I know there's a lot of stuff people are going to take away from this episode. So I got a feeling this will be one of the top downloaded episodes as we go forward here. So again, appreciate you, Mark, and appreciate all you guys for listening. Please share the show to get some value out of this, and we'll see you on the next episode.